The mosquito and the mud. The real battle for the Panama Canal. The hook. The year is 1904. In the festering, snake-infested jungle of the Isthmus of Panama, the most ambitious and brutal engineering project in human history, the American attempt to sever a continent, is already drowning. Not in water, but in death. Every morning the foreman would tally the casualties. They weren't from collapsing rock faces or dynamite explosions. They were from a phantom killer they called Yellow Jack. The official mortality rate among the workers was 75% higher than any other major infrastructure project on Earth. Yet the White House was insistent. America would finish what the French failed to do. The problem was, you cannot dig a canal if your workers are dying faster than the ships can bring replacements. And President Theodore Roosevelt had not hired an engineer to solve this. He had hired a sanitary scientist with a stubborn streak and a revolutionary theory, Dr. William Crawford Gorgas, a man who was about to wage the only successful war against yellow fever in history, a war fought not with bullets, but with screens, oil, and a chilling faith in the most diminutive, despised creature on the isthmus, the mosquito. The inheritance of failure. When the Americans took over the Panama Canal project from the French, they inherited a catastrophe. The French effort, led by Ferdinand de Lesseps, the triumphant builder of the Suez Canal, had utterly collapsed. The jungle had swallowed their machinery, and the sickness had annihilated their workforce. Over 20,000 workers, mostly Caribbean laborers, had perished, leaving behind a graveyard of rusting tools and forgotten dreams. The American construction camp at the town of Cristobal was a vision of hell. The air was thick and humid, smelling of stale sweat, mud, and disinfectant. But the disinfectant was useless. Every few days, a healthy, strong man would wake up with a headache, chills, and fever. Within 48 hours, his skin would turn a ghastly, unmistakable shade of saffron yellow. Then came the black vomit, a terrifying mixture of blood and stomach bile. Death was almost certain. The American chief engineer, John Findlay Wallace, was a brilliant man of steel and concrete, but he was powerless against this invisible enemy. He desperately clung to the prevailing European theory. The sickness came from fomites, contaminated clothing, bedding, and a foul jungle air. Dr. Gorgas, a quiet, meticulous army surgeon who had previously fought yellow fever in Havana, stood firmly against the established scientific dogma. He remembered the work of Cuban doctor Carlos Finlay and American Major Walter Reed, who had tentatively proven that the disease was transmitted solely by the bite of the Aedes aegypti mosquito. This finding was still ridiculed by most of the medical establishment, who insisted the disease was borne by filth. A war against skepticism. Gorgas arrived in Panama ready to implement the mosquito theory, but the Canal Commission, a group of hard-nosed industrialists and bureaucrats, saw him as a nuisance, an impractical fanatic wasting resources. His superior, Chief Engineer Wallace, was openly hostile. "We have to dig the ditch, Doctor. We cannot afford to spend the Commission's budget on mosquito netting when we need steam shovels." The budget Gorgas requested for his sanitary campaign was $10,000. He was initially given a paltry fraction, barely enough to buy basic supplies. Meanwhile, the death toll soared. In November 1904, 38 workers died. By January 1905, the number hit 68. The workforce, terrified, was deserting in droves. The canal was grinding to a halt. Gorgas knew he was fighting two wars, the war against the mosquito and the war against ignorance. He understood that a canal could not be dug by dead men. He was attempting one of the greatest acts of preventative medicine in history, under the most hostile conditions imaginable. The Great Eradication. Finally, as the casualty rate threatened to become an international scandal, President Roosevelt, a man who admired aggressive action, stepped in.
He fired the skeptical Wallace and replaced him with the determined John Frank Stevens. Crucially, Roosevelt gave Gorgas his full, unconditional backing. Gorgas was given the resources to execute his radical vision, and the Great Eradication began. It was an operation of stunning scale and obsessive detail. Isolation and screening. Every home, every hospital, and every barracks was meticulously screened with fine mesh wire to keep mosquitoes out. Sick patients were immediately quarantined behind special double-screened doors, not to protect others from their clothing, but to prevent healthy Aedes aegypti mosquitoes from biting the infected person and flying away to transmit the disease. The oil barrage. Teams of workers were dispatched throughout the jungle and the canal zone to systematically drain standing water, or, when that was impossible, to coat every pool with kerosene, a simple technique that suffocated mosquito larvae.